There we go. So we are here with David Ellefson. David, nice to have you.
How are you, Mitch?
Good, good. So we're going to talk a little bit about Kiss and not Megadeth. Isn't that interesting?
I know them, yes, and I know of them.
And you
Yeah,
know
I've
of
heard of
them,
them
but
before.
yeah, and you know, yeah, we'll talk Megadeth too, since you're playing an hour away at the Amnesia Rock Fest in June 20th. Nice
Yeah, it's in June, right? Yeah, yeah.
nice
The long
hall.
trip across from Europe to Quebec, back to Europe, all like within like a day or two.
Yeah, I think you're doing like Prague on the 18th, Quebec on the 20th, and then I think the Hellfest in Clisy in France on the 22nd.
Yeah, a booking agent must have thought Quebec was in like France or something. They
Yeah,
forgot it was in Canada, so
yeah, he must have said, "Oh,
there's an
they
ocean
speak French
between the
there."
two.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's going to be. Let me just ask you about that.
sure.
When you're 18 or 20, touring must be reasonably easy, considering that you've got the fortitude. But as you get older, doesn't that just wreck your body? Going that far.
Well, it definitely has to become more comfortable. That's for sure.
Yeah,
When you're young, you've got nothing to lose, so you just go for it because you got nothing anyway. So you're all guns blazing. And for me, when I was young, I was basically homeless,
mm,
and being on the road was a way to have a home, have a girlfriend,
right.
albeit a different girlfriend every day, but whatever, it fit the bill. Check it off the list, right?
Oh,
And
nice.
you had beers, cigarettes, hamburgers. Somebody, I guess the beauty of it is someone was always willing to step up and help you out. Because when we started, we were broke, we were homeless, we had nothing, and being on the road, quite honestly, that was like comfort. That was I knew what I was doing. In fact, when the tour is coming to an end, I'm like going, oh man, I got to go back to LA. I'm going to be homeless. I got to find some place to live, which usually meant going to the Rainbow, to like
Hang out with Lemmy.
find a roommate and or to sleep in the rehearsal hall down in Vernon. Me and Chris Paul and Dave, we would take turns. That was our place where we would live from time to time down there. So Gar, our drummer at the time, he had it together. He had a girlfriend and had a job, and he was like civilized, but the rest of us were running like wolves. But yeah, as the years go by, yeah, touring. I remember Gar one time. We were at I think Lemoore in New York, and this is
Right.
probably I don't know maybe on the Peace Cells tour. And somebody comes up to him and says, "Hey, Gar, so where does the tour go from here?" And Gar laughs. He goes, "Tour?" He goes, "Dude, the Rolling Stones tour. We're just on the road." And because every night after you get off stage, you pack the gear up. We had maybe a roadie or two, and then we'd be the ones driving. And whoever was the most coherent would be driving that night.
It's got to be nice not having to do that. Getting on flights and getting on buses and getting home. It's got to be nice. So
Yeah,
let's.
it's definitely better now for sure. Yeah, I mean, look, we can go from Prague to Quebec back to France. So I mean, it's a lot better now maybe than it was then.
It's gonna be a great show. You've got Megadeth on that. I guess it's the Friday or the Saturday, and then Motley Crue comes in the next night. It's gonna be a fun festival. But
Well, we're trying to spend most of our year outside of North America. And truth be told, Canada is one of our big countries we go to, and so we don't want to wear out our welcome. But when the offer came to play that festival, it was like, look, we got to make this happen. So
right,
we carved a hole in our Europe trip to fly all the way over across the Atlantic and then go back again and fit it in because it's important to us. Quebec is it's a great city and the fans are awesome there. So for us, it was worth making it work.
yeah, it's a great province for metal. I know people that are outside of Canada might not appreciate it, but 7 out of 10 metal records have been sold in Quebec, are traditionally sold in Quebec. So 70% of all metal is sold in Quebec. And listen, Metallica is doing one North American show this summer, Montreal. So
There you go.
so
All of our friends doing it, so we're doing it too.
yeah,
Yeah,
join the
yeah,
fun. So
exactly. Yeah,
we had spoken like 3 months ago about Altitudes and Attitudes, your
right,
wonderful EP, and then you were telling me that you were going to do this Kiss or this Gene Simmons rock and roll fantasy camp. So I want to
right.
talk to you about that. But let's go back to a quote that you had put out back in 2012, and it said, uh, for me, it was all about Kiss. My mom took me to see them in Minnesota on their Rock and Roll Over tour, and that
Right.
was it.
Yeah.
Let's start there with your obsession with Kiss or your fandom. What was it about the Rock and Roll Over tour?
You know what? Everything, I think all of us, especially us diehard rocker fans,
Hmm.
we have that one band that defined our life. And for me, I guess probably the very first band was probably Bachman Turner Overdrive when I heard the
Oh, yes.
album. Because I had this, I'd ride in the tractor with, I grew up on a farm, and my dad, we had this farmhand that we hired, and we had these cutting edge John Deere tractors that had 8-track tape players. It was pretty comfortable actually, and so I remember he was playing that, and man, that was really my first really fall in love with hard rock. And then Kiss came up right behind that, and
And
that
covered
was
BTO.
what's that?
And they covered BTO on Creatures of the Night.
Well, and it's funny because Kiss was one of these bands that what they were doing was it was unachievable. I always make the reference of like when you look at like a big jumbo jet like a 747, you look at it and you go, how in the heck does that thing get off the ground? And I took a couple flying lessons when I moved to Scottsdale back in '93, and I had to learn how do airplanes fly. I had to actually fly one myself to figure it out. And that's kind of what I did with rock and roll. Is I saw BTO, and then I saw Kiss, or I heard Kiss, and I'd see them on the Paul Ince Halloween special when I was a kid, and I was just like, how do they do that? And that became my lifelong obsession to figure out how they do that. And here I am, all these years later, still doing the same thing. So, Kiss, I missed the Beatles. I was born in 1964, the year the Beatles came out, I'm told, because I was born that year, so, but I missed them, they were not my band. And I've had many arguments with people over the years who are these big Beatles fans. And I mean, look, man, don't friggin' fault me because of the year I was born. I didn't pick my birth date. I've, of course, since gone back and listened to the Beatles, but Kiss was my Beatles. They were to me what the Beatles were to Gene and Paul. It sounds like they were that band for me. And of course, Cheap Trick. And then I go back, I listen to the Beatles. I'm like, wow, I can see where Kiss and Cheap Trick borrowed heavily from the Beatles. But Gene's bass playing is very much like this kind of Paul McCartney-esque. Kind of like these old German pub, bass lines that Paul was playing. And I hear Gene's, I hear it, now as a more studied, accomplished musician, I can study Kiss and I see it, kind of the origins. Paul Stanley's, his riffs that he comes up with are so bizarre and so different. And I've been reading that book, Nothing to Lose, which to me, that is a must read for every guy or girl who's in a band, because it just goes to show that, those early years, I mean, Megadeth went through the same thing. I'm sure every band who's ever become anything went through the same thing those guys did. Two guys meet. It's their differences that make it work, as well as you have to have enough similarities to get along and be in a band together. But, and they're a band where their differences is what made them so compelling, Yeah. And I appreciate this because Megadeth are the same thing, very focused, very defined, figured out what it is. This is not some random, well, we'll see how it goes. No, this is a focused mission, Management came in, and of course with Kiss, they, it's funny how long it took them to really get their makeup together, and really get their look, and the early days, the gigs and all that stuff, and those guys driving the equipment truck, and they did everything that we all do, and then of course some things happen, and the right people came into the fold that helped the dream become what it is, and so.
Well, you had believers that came in. You had to have people that actually believed in the project and didn't just go, "Oh, money."
Well, like they got their Kiss army, and it's like our fans are the same way, man. They would friggin' take a bullet for Megadeth, and what was the saying years ago? Live for metal, die for Megadeth. I appreciate now. I've become what they have done and what they inspired me to do. So I mean, I give them all the respect. They taught me so much of what I know. I mean, everything down to the detail of like putting the picks on the microphone stand. having a very symmetrical stage, you know, where there's stacks and they're even on both sides. And even though, you know, the bass bins are a different size than the Marshalls, I mean, we go through that all the time in our stage because my Harkey cabinets are a different size and height than the Dave and Chris's Marshalls. So, you know, I mean, I just, you know, I have to laugh because we all have gone through the same thing, you know. Right. So, you know, my hat's off to him.
Yeah. Speaking of books, have you read Paul Stanley's book yet, Face the Music?
I need to get it. You know, we're going to South America here this next week, so I've got a lot of long flights coming up. So thank you for reminding me, because I thought of it the other day when it came out. I need to pick that up.
I highly recommend it. I've read all the different Kiss books, and Paul's by far is the best. It's right, you know, right to the meat. He takes out all the fat, not a lot of minutia and detail. It's just great stories, one after the other, and it's heartwarming because apparently his childhood wasn't that nice, you know?
Yeah, and those are always the things when you really kind of read the backstory of someone's life. You find out what makes them tick, what has sort of driven them to be who they are, to become what they are, what is their motivation for their drive and these kind of things. So I know I like reading that in these books. And, you know, Paul, you know, again, reading that Nothing to Lose book about how I think he came up with the name. And he, you know, is you know, just his songwriting and, you know, and just, you know, I mean, look, he wrote God of Thunder. I mean, it's funny because he wrote a song that defined Gene Simmons' character, you know, so it's funny how, you know, Paul is really, he's not the guy with the reality TV shows and all the other sort of bling and that kind of stuff, but he's kind of been the steadfast, he's a real rock star, man. You know, he's a real musician, he's an artist, he's a songwriter, and it's like I really, you know, I mean, I've always liked him, you know, and his stuff, but again, now listening to his riffs and his guitar playing, he's, you know, and that I've come to appreciate how he kind of has this Pete Townsend meets like old Stones, Keith Richards kind of style and approach to his guitar playing, because we do these kind of simple, I mean, they're not simple, but like 1/5 power chord kind of riffing. And that's the power of, you know, our music and even Judas Priest and these things. But Kiss has got these way more kind of rock and roll-y, yet they're riffs, you know. And for us, you know, some of us, you know, well, all of us who like metal, dude, it's all about the riff. You know, we love the riff. And Kiss just does it in a different way.
Yeah, they absolutely do. So, by the way, speaking of books also, you have your Making Music Your Business Guide. And it just came out on an audio book, I think it can February. Do you want to just quickly tell the folks about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I wrote that on the Euthanasia tour. I was reading a lot of different books and different things, and you know, I didn't want to write some self-help book, but I was, you know, there's a couple of great books. There's Donald Passman has a book. He's an attorney in LA. I know I've got it on my bookshelf. All You Need to Know About the Music Business. I think it is. I got this book shelf of all the books over here, but I loved his book. He's an attorney, you know, so he goes pretty deep into a lot of, you know, details about music business stuff. But Making Music Your Business, for me, we were getting ready to go out and start the promo on the Euthanasia tour, and then the concert tour that followed for about a year. And I just would sit every day on the airplane as I'm flying, and I'd be thinking about all these different things that, as a musician myself, I was writing to our fans and writing to young musicians who.
So David, we were talking about Making Music Your Business, the book you wrote way back when, but came out on audio recently, and of course, Skype being what it is. Well, we get to do a take two.
Well, yeah, that book I wrote. What's funny, 20 years ago, because Euthanasia record came out 20 years ago this year, and which is funny because we're going to go down to South America first and play some of the songs off that record coming up. So right about this time, 20 years ago, I wrote that book, and I wrote it during the I guess probably during a little bit of the recording, but then as we did the promotion and the concert tour for it, I thought about, man, I wish, you know, if any of my idols I grew up with, you know, Gene Simmons or Steve Harris or Geddy Lee or anybody, you know, would have written a book saying, hey, guys, this is what the music business is about. As a musician, this is the stuff this is what you should be looking out for. I would have bought that in a heartbeat, you know, but it, you know, different day. So in our genre, and certainly in my lifetime as a professional musician, and like we're doing right now with the internet, has made it more, we connect better with
Yeah.
people. You know, we're able to do that more now than ever before. And there's a book by Donald Passman, who's an attorney, called All You Need to Know About the Music Business, I think is what it's called. And really good book, really well written, easy to understand. And I thought, you know, that's a cool idea of a book. But I'm obviously going to write mine from a musician point of view. And so I just wrote these, I think there's like 26 chapters. They're all only like 2 or 3 pages long, kind of like royalties, producers, managers, agents. Here's what they do. Here's what they should do. Here's how much you should pay them. This is kind of what you should expect. And, you know, just, now there's some really good, schools. Even Berklee College of Music has like a really great music business program. A lot of colleges have music business programs. But 20 years ago, no one had that stuff. It just wasn't around.
Have you updated the book at all, considering now we have the internet and Twitter and social media, and because the model has changed?
Yeah, in fact, the audiobook, I did some pretty major rewrites, because I think one of the last chapters, one of the chapters in there was about the internet, and it was this brand new thing, and I just touched on it a little bit. Well, of course, in the audiobook, I greatly expanded on that, and also about things like tour sponsorship and licensing and marketing. I mean, that's a huge part of our business these days, and obviously a great way to, bring in extra money, underwrite tours, and a lot of those kind of things. So yeah, I expanded big time on it, and then of course the chapter on videos. For whatever those are worth these days. I mean, you spend a lot of time and money, and they just end up for free on YouTube. So so that chapter was greatly reduced and kind of rewritten in that fashion.
Didn't they end up for free on MTV, or was MTV paying?
Well, but I mean, look at the thrust of where that went. I mean, when something was on MTV, television has such a huge push, or at least it did back then.
Yeah.
I mean, it still does. I mean, TV numbers are massive. The amount of eyeballs that see it, the impressionable, buyer that's on the other end of that, so to speak,
Right. But look at Gangnam Style from Psy. I mean, didn't that have 1 million views? I mean, that's pretty. Or
yeah,
1 billion views.
YouTube and the internet is it's I mean, look, it's even now part of the charts, part of the Billboard charts. They brought that in to be. Because I mean, so many people go to that to hear music, and see the videos. So it's actually part of the chart system now, as it should be, because it's taken over so much. But yeah, there's just TV. To spend that much money on videos and have them on television shows. I mean, thank goodness for like That Metal Show, on VH1.
Yeah,
I mean, that's basically today's version of the Headbangers Ball, and. But there is no, I mean, I remember when you would get your video on daytime play and rotation on, say, MTV and probably Music Plus and Much Music and stuff in Canada.
Yeah.
I mean, you would sell incredible amounts of records, your concert tickets, I mean, just people knew who you were, I mean, so people would come out and see you. The internet has certainly made it easier for younger artists, unknown artists to kind of get a foot in the game. If there's a downside to it, obviously it's harder to make money, if you're a new artist for sure. And you kind of, as a fan, you kind of got to, sift through some of the riffraff too, because now everybody with a video camera and a garage band can almost make an album or make something and stick it on the internet too.
Which is kind of an exciting new model. So let's go back to the rock and roll fantasy camp with Gene Simmons. I mean, so 1977, your mom takes you to rock and roll. Over 2014, Gene Simmons calls you at home and says, "Hey, it's got to be somewhat of a thrill, right?"
Well, yeah, he didn't actually call me.
Okay.
David Fishoff, who runs the fantasy camp, I've done a lot of stuff for him. I did the first one I did was in 2007 or something like that. I did the 10th annual rock and roll fantasy camp over in Vegas, and it was the first time I'd ever done one. And some of my buddies were there, like Mark Slaughter, and Mark actually kind of really helped walk me through the process of what it was. And I was a counselor, so I was one of the guys that they kind of gave me all the metalheads. We put a band together, and then guys like Roger Daltrey would come in to make the rounds to all the rooms, and Slash did that. So this year at the Gene Simmons camp, I was that guy. I was the guy that came in. I was the famous bass player who came in and plugged in a jam. And it was nice. Rudy Sarzo, I've known, for years. Lita Ford I did not know, so it was fun to hang with her. And also Phil Suzanne. Because didn't he wrote Shot in the Dark, right? Or was a co-writer on that with the Ozzy record, I think.
I believe so, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I always had respect for him, and he's a very cool guy, you know, and got to know him, and you know, and Oz Fox was there. So, yeah, you know, a bunch of the buddies from the neighborhood, you know, were all there. So it was cool. It was fun.
And you got to practice some Kiss songs.
Well, it's funny because everybody's learning Kiss tunes, you know, and you know, here again, Kiss tunes are not easy songs. And I go back to me as a kid. It's like, you know, here I am, this huge Kiss fan. I did not play a lot of Kiss songs growing up. In fact, maybe a couple at the most. And I realized they were hard to play. You know, you had to have not very many guys could sing them. And, you know, that's to sound legitimate. And the bass lines were, you know, intertwined around, you know, these riffs. And again, like we talked about, the riffs were different. They were not easy to play. You know, especially when you put them up against, say, like a Zeppelin or maybe a Bad Company song and some of these other, you know, Montrose, other things that I was playing when I was growing up. The Kiss stuff was remarkably difficult to play. And here I am watching. There's one band that was learning "Do You Love Me" and singing it in Hebrew for Gene. And I tell you, it was Brent Muscat's. It was his band. He was the counselor from Festa Pussycat. You know, he lives over there and does the City Centers, I think. And I'm thinking, I know the tune. It was one of my favorite tunes off Destroyer. You know, and you know, but it's amazing how you cue off the vocal. You know, you really like my limousine. You know, and you kind of, you know, you're. But, you know, you're kind of, those are the cues, you know, and when you're singing it in Hebrew, you're like,
what are the cues?
You're just missing the cue, and I'm like, look, I know the tune, but I can't play it in Hebrew, sorry. Wrong key.
Is it fair to say that it's hard to play some of the Gene bass parts because he's not really a bass player, he's more of a guitar player playing on a bass? He's playing more guitar riffs, right?
Yeah. It's interesting, and because I've, you know, certainly worked with other guitar players who come up with bass lines, and sometimes funny guitar players come up with some of the best bass lines because they're not thinking like a bass player. It's my, if I had a critique at all about, sometimes you go to these bass shows, you know, Bass Player Live and these things, and of course you see some amazing bass players and guys who are very skilled and schooled at the bass. But, you know, I went to a Jeff Berlin clinic. I happened to be in Boston. I went to Berklee College of Music that week, and I was doing some stuff there. And I went up the street to a Guitar Center, and Jeff Berlin was there. And I tell you, he said something that I've thought forever, which is when you are learn music, don't just learn the bass, you know, don't just learn the guitar, learn music, you know, learn the, and not even just the song, learn music, you know, what are you doing here, you know? And so I thought, man, I was so happy to hear someone else say that. And it's funny because, you know, you know, it was one band, I forgot, I think it was Rudy Sarzo's band. This young guy was in there, and they were playing God of Thunder, you know, and I plugged in, and I'm like, look, I know the tune, and I kind of marginally know the bass line, but I don't know all the detail of the part. So I was watching this guy, and he was young, like 17, 18 years old, and he knew the part, man. I was like, that is impressive, because when you hear the part against the drums, especially during the verse, you know, it's lots of times, you know, in probably Megadeth, you kind of learned it from Judas Priest, AC/DC. There's always this kind of pulsing, driving bass line under the riff, you know. Even though the guitar part's na 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 na, you know, there's always a there's always like this bass and drum groove going under the thing. And Gene doesn't do that in most of his tunes, you know. Yeah. In like God of Thunder, you know, then you get into the verse. I forgot how it goes, but it's this very kind of choppy, funky bass line that plays against the riff, you know. And I would honestly, I kind of turned down. I'm like, let me check this kid out, see how he plays it.
How he plays it, see how he handles it.
I learned a lot, man. It was cool to you know, go room to room with these guys, especially when they're playing Kiss tunes, you know. So I got one room I had a lot of fun in is I went into Vinny Appice's room, and they played Stand Up and Shout. And I was going, man, I you know, when I was doing Hail and stuff, you know, Ripper Can Sing, all that stuff. And we would, you know, play a couple of Dio tunes and Sabbath stuff, you know, whatnot. But I tell you, Stand Up and Shout, was it Stand Up and Shout? Stand Up and Shout. I forgot what the heck it was. Anyway, it was just cool playing the tunes that he played on.
him.
with Ronnie. You know what I mean? It's just there were just great songs, and and Vinny's just such a cool guy and just a character.
Vinny's great. Yeah, I love speaking with it. Vinny's. By the way, you just mentioned AC/DC. Have you heard today's news about
Man,
AC/DC?
I did. I just heard about that, man, and
What a bummer. I
it's
mean,
really a bummer,
there's no
man.
other word for it.
We did some shows with them in Europe back in 2001, and met them just briefly. They're a really, there's like five guys and they're locked and loaded, and they all just kind of move as this little team. In the arena, they play, they leave, and you kind of don't really see them. And we had a couple minutes just to hang with him at one point at one of the shows, and Malcolm was just a cool guy, man. He had his life was really together, and I think he quit drinking at that point, and just was just a cool guy, and just really small and tiny. Those guys are tiny,
Yeah, they are.
and but just as you read about AC/DC, it's a lot of that is his vision and his songs, and obviously he and his brother, but yeah, just man, it's just sad to to hear that about him.
Yeah, and they were going to do this 40th anniversary tour and album, and
there was one tour he didn't play on, right? I remember going down to see him at the Forum in LA years ago, maybe 1988 or something, and his cousin filled in on guitar, Jason Young, right?
Possibly.
I forgot who it was. There was another, this guy that filled in, I think, at one point, but it was one of the cousins or the brothers, one of the Youngs or something, But yeah, I mean, at this point in time, it's just, boy, the legacy of AC/DC, man. I mean, it's sad, Prayers be with him and his family for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of giving back to the community, you recently went down to a high school in Arizona and spoke about heroin and drug abuse. First of all, why do that? Why is it important for you to give back and go talk to people like this?
Well, you know what? This was kind of a unique situation. I kind of do that, on my own, just as part of a kind of a design for living, and help a lot of people. And I don't go out and do it publicly because it's just kind of a private matter for a lot of people,
Okay.
But this particular high school reached out to me. They've got actually a thing called Teen Addiction Anonymous is what they're calling it, Teen AA, and it was kids from within the school that started sort of a recovery process, and they actually went to the principal and said, hey, we'd like to start this, and they had the blessing from within for the school, and then the parents got involved, and the mayor and the sheriff, and I mean, everybody really jumped in like, wow. What's cool about this isn't people, the parents from the outside coming in and just saying dare and just say no and all this. These were kids from within that were like standing up and saying, we want to see change, and if it's going to happen, it's going to come from us. So my heart always goes out for that, because that's been my own experience, is that if you want things to change, you have to be the one to change it from within. So when they asked me to, if I'd be available to come over and talk to them, I said, yeah, this is definitely something different, and I like it. I hope it's something that would catch on, and again, it's not a just say no. It's not a harshing on partying or any of that kind of stuff, but it's like, these are people that really, a school that really had some serious problems, and they're correcting them and getting them worked out, all directed from the student body, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And from a fan's perspective, it's nice to see somebody like you take the time, because, you don't have to. There's no reason for you to do that, and it's nice to see you do it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you. Appreciate it. And it kind of strengthens your own resolve, I've talked about it in my book, My Life with Death here, about, just my own things that I've gone through with that. And it's good. It's when you've kind of been down that road yourself, experience, there's nothing like experience. So, sometimes it sucks to have to get the experience, but when you have it, it's, if I can be helpful to anybody ever in those situations, I always try to take some time out to do it.
Yeah, so. And I don't want to keep you on here forever and always. I'd love to talk to you all night, but Altitudes and Attitudes with Frank Bello came out in February. Any update? Any more shows? Any more recordings? Where are we going with
You
that?
know, it kind of worked out to release that because we're coming into NAMM, which was at the end of
Mm-hmm.
January. Anthrax is writing a new record,
Yep.
looking to get in the studio and be recording that, I think, shortly. Megadeth, we knew we were going to be off the road for a couple of months here. So it was the right time to do it, so it wasn't underfoot of anything with Megadeth or Anthrax business. And so now as we're ramping back up this week to get busy, I don't want other things in the way of that. But, I tell you, it's a pretty cool, creative little thing we got between
Yeah.
me and Frank. We're like two buddies and who just really get along well. We musically worked well together, and we're talking here about at some point in the future trying to get back in with Jay Rustin and record a few more tunes.
Okay, so it wasn't one and done. That's good. That's good to
No,
hear.
no, I don't think so at all. No, and that was why we just said, look, let's just do 3 songs. Let's because we had a handful of them laying out there, and we said let's pick 3 great tunes. That are really good, and let's not inundate ourselves and get all bogged down trying to make a like a 12-song record, because the truth of it is there only 1 or 2 of these things will ever be a single anyway. So let's just really focus on these 3. We'll pop it out. And, if people like it, then we'll go back in and we can do another 2 or 3 more songs. And we don't have to burden ourselves with always, trying to do a whole bunch of tunes. And it just sets the stage, for like NAMM and clinics and various little people call us to want to go out and do some performances and do some things. We got something we can do and have some fun with it and rock the house and have a good time.
And then I guess the last thing, and again, thank you for joining me today. Been really kind. What about new album for Megadeth? Are we getting anywhere near that, or starting, or?
Yeah, we're definitely started for sure. It always starts with we sift through what we've got process, and we start listening through the riffs, and I know Dave's been doing a lot of that, and now that we're getting together this week, tomorrow to rehearse in Vegas, and then get this tour started. That will definitely be the focus of the next few months, is really getting honed together. And I think all of us, I've got folders sitting here on my desktop of riffs and parts and things and ideas. So, I just sit here I just got my little flip camera. I just sit here and just record riffs all day long. So I can remember, I hear them and I got to remember where on the fingerboard I actually played them, So for me, it's kind of my little memory jogger, and I can go back but yeah, then we start kind of sending some stuff around to each other, and we'll definitely, I think the goal is we got some touring this year, and then as we get later in the year, we'll get really focused in on getting this next record done.
Yeah, because the quote that you had back in February, if you were properly quoted, was that you were going to take a different approach on the next album. What would the different approach be? Just how you put it together, or musically, just go somewhat?
I think both. We came right off that Countdown to Extinction tour straight into the studio and started working on a record. And it was over the holidays. It was over the Christmas holidays. It was, it was
not
it was a lot of work at a very kind of difficult time. You've been on the road for a year. You're heading into the family holiday season, and all of a sudden you're trying to ramp up for this record. And then in the middle of it, Johnny K had committed to another record that he was doing. So anyway, it was just a lot of stuff kind of bouncing around, and so we got it done, and it was fine. But I think on this one, we've got kind of maybe a longer time horizon to look at it now and go, okay, as we get closer, we can need to take these steps to get. So by the time we're off the road and we're in working on this thing, we really know, this is the focus now for the next few months to get it done. And I don't know, we seem to do pretty good when we come off the road later in the year and work on it. I remember when we came off Clash of the Titans in 91 and we went right in and started working on the demos for Countdown. Was pretty much the end of 91. January 92, we opened up the recording fund and went in and started making the record, So I think this one seems like it's probably going to be a similar kind of process, we'll have some time to really kind of grind through these tunes and really work on them, before we get in and start recording.
And just for my own curiosity, why does a band like Megadeth even need to make new music at this point? You could go out and still sell out the same venues and just play the classic songs. So what motivates you? I
All
mean,
right, we'll do that then.
no, but you know very well that there in a sense there's no need. You can just go and play, you know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the vote of confidence on that.
But
And
there
you know,
is.
the truth of it is, you know, again, 20 years of euthanasia right now. And I don't know why 20 years seems to be the mark, you know,
Yeah.
but I guess pretty soon Rust in Peace will be at 25 years and we can go do that one again. But
Right.
actually, probably the one that's funniest one that everybody wants to hear now is Killing Is My Business.
Yes.
You know, which was just this little scrappy little cult classic record that, you know, when that first came out, obviously the metalheads liked it, but everyone else, it was not a mainstream album at all, you know. But I guess we've been around long enough now and we got enough fans that everybody's like, you know, oh, I want to hear Killing Is My Business, you know. So sometimes me and Sean will sit in the dressing room and start riffing through, you know, Chosen Ones and, you know, all these, you know, old Killing Is My Business and stuff. And it's fun, you know. Actually, that would be a fun one to play just because you know, I was there. You know, it was just such a peculiar moment in time with that whole thing. But yeah, I mean, as far as new music goes, you know, I think just as a musician, as an artist, you always want to create something new.
Right.
You know, I think it's more about that. It isn't about, well, we need to sell more records. It isn't a we need to sell concept. You know, it's just you want to write, you want to create, you want to keep pushing new things forward. And I think, if anything, we've pulled ourselves off of the mandatory timeline of, you know, we have to get a record up.
The cycle.
Yeah, we kind of pulled ourselves out of that, which just shows that it comes from the heart more, you know, than it is like, well, we got to get on a schedule and get to meet the deadlines. And I mean, we're ever since I came back to Megadeth in 2010. I mean, to me, we're just a band who's always on tour,
right?
And then we have to find these little windows to make new records, and that's probably the most challenging part of the writing process, because there's no use making a record unless the tunes are great.
Right.
And to make sure that your material's strong, it's really good. And you know, it's funny because years ago, like for instance, So Far So Good So What influenced Rust in Peace, which influenced Countdown, which influenced Euthanasia, etc. And now here we are doing Rust in Peace, which I think kind of influenced the 13 record. Then we did Countdown, which I think influenced, you know, the Super Collider record, and now we're doing Euthanasia. And you know, at some point, you know, I guess the difference is in those days, those were the you know, that was fresh paint on the canvas. We were creating our future. Now we get to not only create our you know, future with new music, but we do get the hindsight perspective of going back and listening and going. And especially for me and Dave, because we were there, you know, listening back and going, what was it about this record that everyone liked, and what were we listening to back in those days, and you know, what was going on, you know? And sometimes, you know, because you're younger and there's chaos and there's all kinds of stuff going on, and also it was the excitement. This was the first time ever that you're doing this. There's, you know, you're embracing this unknown, you know, and now the unknown is a little bit out of the equation because we know a lot of this stuff now, you know. So you know, artistically, it's an interesting process, you know, being an older musician with experience under your belt, you know.
Yeah, the only reason I ask is because when I ask, for example, well, in fact, Dee Schneider of Twisted Sister, when's the new Twisted comes, he goes, why do I want to have a built-in pee break to my show? We're going to play the new songs. They're all going to go get a beer, and they're going to come back and say, play I Wanna Rock.
Right.
And so it's an interesting perspective that he's just like, there's no point.
Well, you know, and again, with me and Frank, you know, we took the approach of, let's just throw a couple tunes out there, you know. I mean, Rush did that, didn't they? And then they played like 3 songs, or they recorded 3 tunes, and then they went out and played the Moving Pictures album, you know, which I thought was cool, you know, that it's, I mean, I think our fans like long play records. There's just something about the process of, you know, when you get a CD, you open it up, there's the album, looking through the lyrics and who played the solo and recorded, but, you know, I mean, there's just that thing that I think we all grew up with that, you know, a lot of us like to have, you know, there is that thing, but
well, I think it's also specific to metal fans. I think metal fans they want a new Manowar and a new, you know, Accept and a new Megadeth. It's not like a Madonna fan that goes, man, play Like a Virgin, I'll go see the show, and okay, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think as metal fans, you know, it's the needle drop thing, you know, when you hit play, you want to hear the whole thing, you know, you're not just, well, let me sift through and get to the singles, you know what I mean? You're like,
Absolutely.
Let me kick back and enjoy the experience. And we make Megadeth records like that. We make albums. We don't make songs when we don't make
Right.
singles.
You
You know,
don't you
yeah,
don't
we make
make 10 songs.
yeah,
You make,
yeah.
you
We
know.
don't sit there and go, well, this needs to be this song and that's, we really just, when you start to listen to it, you go, man, we got a nice body of work here. And then, the thing, you start to hear like, this should be the opening track. This should be here. Man, this will be great. Kind of to end side A. You almost still think of side A,
Side
side
A,
B,
side A, side
you
B.
know. And you make it so that it's interesting, and it's like going to a movie. You go like watch a cinema film, where it's this process, and it takes you through this kind of emotional journey. That's how we make Megadeth records. We make the whole body of work.
And that's a lost art. So many albums now are either just 10 random songs that they've thrown together like in a soup, or they just don't make albums. And so to hear that you're actually thinking of a continuity and you know, it, that's good to know. You're still making art.
Yeah, and probably the hardest part of it is we're very hard on ourselves. We'll sit and listen to something and go, you know what? We had something very similar to that back on So Far So Good So What. So we can't play that riff. I mean, if we can change it, great. But it's too much. Sounds too much like so. And even a lyric, will be like, yeah, that sounds a lot like something we had on, The World Needs a Hero or something. We got to come up with something different or better. So that's probably the hardest part is we have this body of work behind us now, and that becomes the benchmark to,
Yeah.
we don't want to be one of those bands that just goes back in and repeats everything over again. And plus, I think it's a rip off to the fans to make a record like that too. So
that's great. Anything else is there a website we want to plug or anything? Because I've
well,
taken up.
Megadeth.com. Yeah, Megadeth.com, of course, has all the Megadeth stuff. DavidEllefson.com has all, personal stuff and whatever I'm up to on there. So that's, I'd say those are the ones for now.
And of course, Kiss got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I'm assuming in the next 10 years, Megadeth will be right there with Judas Priest and Iron Maiden.
We'll see. I'm glad we're doing this interview after they got in because I've been kind of following you and watching your everything Kiss. I'm thinking, oh boy, he's going to grill me about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame now. So, hey, I'm glad. Look, I'm glad they're in. It is what it is. Life moves on. I think for us bands and Kiss for sure. They never did it for those moments. It's just like all of us, it's great to be nominated for a Grammy. It's wonderful, to get all these accolades and these things all these years later. But, that is not the reason we started doing it, So it's sometimes you get asked, well, how important is this? And it's like, hey, it's cool. It's great to be invited to these things and be part of it. But, those aren't the reasons you start doing this, and I think that, I don't know, I guess probably makes it a sweeter deal,
Yeah, and as a fan of Megadeth and Kiss, I just find the whole process so political that it really lacks validity. And I'm not going to listen to Destroyer more because they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I'm not going to listen to it less. It doesn't change what Kiss is or what Megadeth is. And
hey, listen, man, like when a pop artist, especially a new artist, wins a Grammy, like I remember the year Norah Jones won all those Grammys. I mean, her career took off. If you're a young new artist, it can set you on easy street for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
But when you're a metal band and you win a Grammy, you could probably look at your sales chart and there'd probably be the one little tiny bump, and who cares? I mean, you know what
Exactly.
I mean? Metal fans don't care if you win a Grammy or not. In fact, sometimes it works against you. A metal fan. We are because I'm a fan too.
Well, listen, I mean, Metallica did the Black Album, and ever since they've been the sellouts. And it's like
they sold out everywhere. That's for sure.
What is Megadeth at? You're at what, 30 years now? 35?
30 years, yeah, 31 actually this year.
Yeah, and how many Grammys and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominations? Not a lot. And you know what? You're still a powerful band. You still make great albums, and you still have a rabid fan base. And that's what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, look, as artists, you write different songs, you do different things, which garner you successes. But the successes are the rewards. They should never be the reason that drives you to do it. And I got just speaking for us, any of our best successes were because we were just being genuine about what we were doing, and because fans can smell a rat. I mean, I know I could growing up when my bands would start to turn corners. Like, what are they doing, man? That's not the band that I founded when I was the only kid in my little town in Jackson, Minnesota, who knew of these bands. So it's it's that's the thing we love about metal and hard rock, man. It's authentic, it's genuine, and we hold our heroes to those standards.
Is that being a Kiss fan at Rock and Roll Over? Was it Unmasked or The Elder that made you go, the hell was that?
Honestly, Dynasty was. I did not buy Dynasty. Oh. That was when I was off the Kiss wagon, and part of it was just because other stuff was coming up, like the Boston record came out, Van Halen, the first Van Halen, that record especially. I mean, man, that was a life changer for me. That one. So there were just. I was growing up, and different records were coming my way, and then AC/DC came into the fold, and then I remember one day bringing home Judas Priest Unleashed in the East, and and it's just like, so life moves on, and so you get turned on to other things too.
Oh, good. Well, listen, I keep telling you it's one last question. I've added 15 extra minutes, so I'm going to stop, even though I have 18,000 more up here. But hey,
we'll do another one again soon.
We'll do another one soon. We'll catch up on the tour, and maybe I'll come out and see you in Quebec. And
there you go.
There you go, and we'll do something backstage or something. We'll send it out to the world.
Perfect. That sounds good. All right,
you,
awesome.
David. Always a pleasure. Bye bye now. Man.